What's up, guys? Welcome back. My name's Georgia,
And I'm Caleb.
and we just wanted to share with you our story.
Yeah, the purpose behind us sharing is we kind of have a crazy story, and we went through a lot of ups and downs and a lot of issues in our relationship and where we started and where we came from. And ultimately, we've grown to this place of a very deep and intimate relationship and friendship. And it was not always like that, but we really wanted to encourage you and share with you kind of what journey the Lord put us on in this process. And hopefully it encourages you. Hopefully you can learn from our mistakes, because we made a lot of them.
So we just really hope that this encourages you. How we're going to tell the story is kind of like where he's at the timeline and where I'm at the same timeline.
Right.
So you can kind of see where our minds were at throughout the whole story.
Because there was you'll see, but there was a very long season where we were not on the same page.
Right.
As far as what the direction of our relationship was going to go.
Our story starts, we knew each other from school.
We both attended the same school together at Lifestyle, and we both worked together at the same company. I mean, when we started, the very first time I'd ever seen Georgia was at school, and it's kind of funny now to look back, but I remember it was her. She got up and she walked away, and I had never met her. I had heard about her because she was one of the more well-known people at school, and I was not. I was the kind of person, I was sitting in the back. I didn't want anyone talking to me, or really, not that I didn't want anyone talking to me, the way that I learned best was by being alone and just focusing, and I wasn't as social. And so when I first saw her, my first thought was, that girl's one of the weird ones. That girl is one of those very spiritual, bizarre people. And that was before the Lord really did a lot in my heart regarding the spirit.
Which is pride.
Which was pride. I had a lot of pride and a lot of things in my life that I just thought I was kind of better than certain types of people. And I labeled her as very weird in my eyes. And that was my very first impression and thought of her when I first met her. But that was about a few months before I actually had a face-to-face interaction with her.
Yeah, and my experience, I didn't really know him at school, but we did work together at a TV station, and that was our job. But he was kind of, I don't know how you say it, except
I was a lead over you, kind of a manager position over you, and she was doing something that I needed to go correct. Just like she was watching a video between a task that she was having to do, and I had to go tell her not to do that. So when I went to go talk to her, I corrected her, and I'm not gonna lie, I was very brand new to this form of leadership position, and so I already know I was going up to this really nervous, and so I went up to her and I was kind of like, hey, can you not do that? I basically corrected her in what she was doing, and she gave me this look of like, who the heck do you think you are? And it was just kind of a funny thing now, but at the time she did not receive it well at all.
Yeah, I was like, who is this child talking to me?
And telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And that was our first impressions,
Which is pride.
really, of each other. And so we started off.
And so I did not like him at all.
And I
he
didn't like her.
me.
It was this thing of, I really was like, I don't want anything. I don't want to deal with this person.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around this person. And so,
of all the people, I was like not wanting to talk to him.
right. And so going forward, we never really had any interactions at school, and at work it was very minimal. Oftentimes, if there was ever correction that needed to take place or something like that, I was not the one that was talking with you about it. She was on one side of the corner of the room, I was on the complete other. But what really happened, which was kind of bizarre, in our second semester of school, a friend of ours, someone that I was often just chatting with at work, who happened to sit next to her, he would come over and he would talk to me about different stuff, and he would kind of tease me a little bit about, I just want to set you up with people, and he was trying to like get me in a relationship, and that was not something I was interested in at all. There's one thing that I was really 100% sure in at the time, was I was content being single. I actually loved being single at the time, wasn't looking for any relationships at all, and he kind of was pushing I want to get you connected with somebody, and he had mentioned Georgia, and I was like, George. I was like, no way, dude. We would not fit. We would clash. This is not a good thing at all.
Do you know the real reason you thought that, or you just?
The real reason I thought that?
Yeah.
I genuinely just thought that.
Oh.
What do you mean?
If that's what you actually thought?
Yeah, my genuine thought was, oh my gosh, there's no way. Because the only thing I knew about you was you were really, at school, you were one of the more outgoing personalities, and you were very just strong-willed person, and in my mind, my only interaction with you was that one moment where I had to correct you, and it just didn't go well. And so I was thinking, oh, there's no way it would fit. We would not be a good fit at all. And I was telling him this. I was like, dude, don't even try that. It's not gonna work. And he goes, no, I really feel like there's something there. I'm gonna try and make this happen. And what was his interaction with you like?
So his interaction with me was like, we need to get Caleb hooked up with somebody. And so what we were talking about was that we need to...
You and him.
Yeah, find someone for him. So we started looking for other girls for him to...
I wasn't asking for this, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to clarify. I was completely content and didn't want this happening, but they were out there doing...
They were
having too
goofy,
much fun.
Yeah. And so then he was like, you need to have him practice talking to girls, because he doesn't talk to girls.
Well, yeah. I didn't talk to anybody, especially not girls. It was probably a confidence issue. It really was more so like, I just didn't want to deal with it.
So I went over and talked to him. I said, hello, Caleb. And I stuck my hand out and shook his hand, and I just held my hand there.
At work.
At work. I just was holding on to his hand.
And I was sitting at the time, and she was standing, and I was holding like this, and she was just holding my hand, and I was thinking, what are you doing? Like, this is weird. Like, it was so uncomfortable.
And I didn't feel weird at all.
Because I wasn't used to that form of just, I don't even know what to call it. You just were very aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, hello? Like, so weirded out by the whole thing. And then a couple days later, the Lord gave you
the Lord really...
a prophetic word about me?
So after a while, like, I don't know, it's not like we really interacted in between. Just that one time, I interacted with him at school, and he thought we were going to talk to his friend.
There was a friend of mine who is a very attractive individual who I figured more women would be more drawn to him, and her friends came up to me at break and started talking to me, and in my mind I'm like, they're not here to talk to me, they're waiting to see when my friend comes back. And thankfully my friend didn't show up until the break was over, so they had to go back to their seats, and then he came back, and turns out I found out later that
I was going to introduce my friend to his friend, so we were, but I was going to talk to him. So it was almost like we were both going to go talk to two different people.
And it wasn't a romantic thing in her mind at that point.
It wasn't romantic.
It was just, she was...
Then after that, the Lord had... Well, even around that time, the Lord had placed, like, him on my heart. Like, my heart had been turned towards him, but it wasn't romantic. It was like, you know, when you meet someone new, and you just... Your heart, like, the Father's love is just so for that person, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to give you everything, and I want to just encourage you, and you're going to do amazing things, and you just have so much love for that person. That's what I felt towards him. My heart was just turned towards him.
And I didn't feel that way at all. Yeah. I was very much still very just in my own world, not thinking about her or anything along those lines.
Yeah, because it didn't have to be. It didn't have to be, because I was just...
It wasn't romantic.
It wasn't romantic. I just wanted to give the Father's love.
Eventually, you got a prophetic word, and you gave it to me at work.
Oh yeah, I wrote it on a post-it note.
Yeah, she wrote a whole post-it note thing out, and at that point, I only had now a few interactions. One was her shaking my hand all awkwardly, and me thinking, oh gosh, what the heck did our friend do? And then the interaction at school, which I thought was awkward, and then she handed me this sticky note, and as I read the sticky note, it was all about the Father's love for me, and it was like a love letter almost from the Father to me, and I was just like, oh gosh, she's in love with me. What did I do? What do I do? What do I do? I was freaking out, like thinking, oh my goodness, this girl's into me, and I'm not. I don't know how to avoid this, and I didn't want to be mean, and so I didn't avoid you, but I kept my interactions with her to a minimum, because I was trying to stop what I thought my friend was trying to do, and that was set us up. And so
I don't remember that many interactions with us after that sticky note before.
Right.
So then Then I think I reached out to you on Facebook, and I was like,
You
hey.
did. I had a day. I don't remember exactly what was happening, but I was just having a rough day, and
Oh yeah, you were.
in my immaturity, I was letting that rough day affect me at work, and so at work, you could just tell that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. I was just. My mind was busy. My mind was on that thing, and I was not really shaking it. I wasn't taking those thoughts captive. I wasn't healthy in that way, and so I was really trying to focus on something else, and she could tell. And so she reached out to me on Facebook just to say like, hey, I hope you're doing okay, just want you to know I'm praying for you. And I actually didn't see it until like a day later, maybe. It wasn't like that very quick.
But it didn't bother me because
right. And then
it wasn't anything. Didn't like him.
Right, she was just being encouraging. She was being a friend and trying to reach out just to pray with me, encourage me. And so when I saw it, I thanked her, and we kind of had a little bit of dialogue back and forth on Facebook. And then she eventually said, "Here,
just text me," because I didn't like I never would read the text on Facebook either.
I didn't either. It was Facebook. I rarely went on there, and so it wasn't like it was easy to keep up with. So she just said, if you need anything, just text me.
Yeah, and I wasn't.
And
I wasn't even trying to keep a conversation going,
because even after that we didn't really text that often.
Yeah, we didn't even.
I think
text.
I texted you saying this is me,
Caleb,
and that was it.
And then we didn't really
text that much after that because it wasn't like we were interacting that much. But then what happened is I eventually, when summer hit after L2, I moved to a different house. And when I moved to a different house with different people.
Which was mostly the people that I hung out with was where he moved.
Right. I moved to a house where a lot of her friends had already been living. So
I was always there anyways.
Right. And so we started hanging out kind of in group settings in that time. And really started to get along and just kind of start to develop a friendship.
We were always together that summer.
Yeah, we were together
but in a big group. We never were really alone.
I went on a trip to San Diego to visit my grandparents in June, and that was when we started
texting
talking a lot. That was when we started texting.
When was that? When was their trip?
It was in June.
In June. So we started only text. We talked on Facebook in April.
Yeah, like April, and then in June is when we really started texting.
So that's 2 months
I went
later.
on a trip, and she had reached out, basically asking me how the trip was going, and at that point the conversation just kept going. And when I came back, she was we were good. We were kind of just got to know each other a little more. So we were just interacting more. At work, we were talking to each other more, and our friendship had just grown over that time. We did eventually get to a point where we were both talking so much, but we both didn't have romantic feelings for one another, and we felt like the other had.
Yeah,
we started to get that feeling like, oh gosh, maybe this other person's starting to catch feelings for me, and that's not something we want to do. And so I had actually reached out to her and said, I need to talk to you about something, and she called me, and I basically explained like, hey, I don't know if this is the case, but I had a feeling this might be. I felt like I needed to tell you. I had a feeling you might be catching feelings for me, and I just want you to know that's not where I'm at. That's not what I'm thinking. This is not something that I really want in that way. And she had said,
I felt the same way. I was like, nope, I did not like you. I'm sorry. I felt that he was, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. So that was
relief.
Cool. Yeah, it was cool.
And so I think it was all the way up until August. Or not quite August. It was the end of July. Yeah. We were doing good. And
we were talking a lot and
talking. There were times where we would talk on the phone, and we would just be in groups a lot, and it was good. It was a good friendship. We enjoyed each other's company.
We were really good friends, and yeah,
we really enjoyed each other's company. And in the end of July is when things started changing for me.
And so around that time, I had asked the Lord if, maybe yours comes first.
Yeah, I think mine comes first.
Okay.
So what started changing for me was there did come a point where I really did start to think that they could be a thing. But my main issue was the age difference. Right now she's 31 and I'm 23. At the time she was 30 and I was 22. So I was just thinking, well, I don't know if that's a thing. You know, I enjoyed her company, I enjoyed her personality, I loved her love for the Lord. But I thought that might be an issue, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. And I remember I started to really kind of catch sort of a romantic feeling. One day we were at work. We ended up being the last people on our shift working. It was just me and her. And between phone calls, we would just talk. And we were just talking about everything. And I really enjoyed just being around her. Like, it just was light and fun. And it was just great.
Easy.
Yeah, it was really easy going. Everything about it was so much fun. And I remember I called my mom a couple days later, and I had called my mom regularly, and at that time she could tell I started talking about my friend Georgia, and as I was talking about her, she goes, "Who's this girl that got you all whirly?"
Oh, whirly.
And I was like, which was such a weird thing for my mom to say, but I was like, well, you know, I started telling a little more about her, and then I said, there's one issue though, Mom, and that's, you know, she's 30. And I expected my mom to be like,
back up, tell the...
I've had previous relationships or previous interests in which the girl was a little older. My previous girlfriend was only a year older, and my mom was like, no, she's too old for you. Like, my mom was very not wanting me to be with an older woman at all. And so I was going into that conversation expecting her to be like, no, this is the worst thing ever. How could you do that? It's not right. And so when I told her she was 30, my mom, to my surprise, goes, oh, well, that's okay. You're kind of an old soul anyway, Caleb. You wouldn't get along with girls your age. And I remember, like, in my mind thinking, who are you and what have you done with my mother? But in that time when that happened, it's almost like I felt permission to feel the way that I was starting to feel. And so I knew that she was not in that place because we had already communicated about a month or a little bit more than a month ago that wasn't where we were at, that wasn't the direction we were going. And so I kind of just had to harbor these feelings, but there came a point where I just had to be honest with myself and had to be honest with her and just give her the benefit of the doubt, saying this is where I'm starting to be at. And I kind of went into that. I asked if I could talk to her and on the phone, and I went into that conversation expecting rejection, and I was kind of prepared for that. I was like, you know, it's okay, it's not a big deal, you know, but I'd rather be upfront and say this is where I'm at than it be this weird hidden thing. And so I called her. It was 10 o'clock at night, and I just figured I'd call her, tell her real quick, and then I'd go to bed, you know, do whatever. And so I told her, hey, I just want you to know I'm starting to really feel something for you, and really starting to, in a romantic way. And she was totally gracious about it. She's like, wow, you know, that's okay, I understand, it happens. I'm not there. She was explaining she wasn't feeling that way. That's not what her intentions were, and that was great. And I actually felt great in that conversation. I walked away feeling like, wow, this burden had been lifted off my shoulders of this pressure of wanting to let her know. And we actually ended up talking that night.
Didn't I prophesy that night, or didn't I pray over you?
No.
Was that not the?
That was later. No,
oh.
That was later. But so that night we ended up talking till like 5 in the morning.
Till the sun came up, huh?
Yeah, we were literally just on the phone talking. It wasn't even like we tried. It was just we somehow one conversation led to another, and we just started getting to know each other some more and talking, and it went really well. I started working with my cousin at the end of the summer just to make some extra cash in Dallas. And at that point, the Lord had kind of already done some stuff in my heart where I felt like I had to die to the whole relationship.
Meanwhile, I had asked the Lord, is he the person? Because he felt that way. So I felt I better ask the Lord. And so I asked the Lord, and I did not feel peace about it. And the Lord encountered me in a special way that he connects with me. And it was like a physical encounter with the Lord. And he said, no, like I did not have peace about it. And it was so clear, and it was such a real thing that there was no denying it. And so throughout the summer, I was just like, okay, well, he's not the person for me, but I couldn't go back on already knowing what the Lord had done and how the Lord had encountered me. It was clearly no, like I couldn't deny it.
Right.
So,
and then after,
but I was starting to like him.
right.
Around that time.
And so I had started working with my cousin, and I was basically just going to his place. He did business in Dallas, and I started cleaning his apartment and just helping him out with whatever he needs. So one day he told me to just clean. And again, at the time, the Lord had really done something in my heart to help me just die to the whole thing. It was this thing of it wasn't owning me. I had dealt with a little bit of like jealousy and things like that, but he really took that away because I laid it down. I said, Lord, I'm giving this to you. I'm not going to worry about it. And at that point, then I started working with my cousin. So I'm working with my cousin, and he tells me he needs me to clean up his whole apartment. So as I'm cleaning up the whole apartment for hours, I'm listening to some worship music, and I was just praising God and just doing my own thing. It wasn't focused on anything regarding us. It was just focused on the Lord. And at the end of maybe about 3 hours of cleaning, I put on some Eric Gilmore and decided I was just gonna like be still and just be with the Lord. And as soon as I laid down, I experienced my first vision, and I didn't even know what it was. I wasn't asleep. I knew I was awake, but it was almost like a dream where it was just, as my eyes were closed, I could see it all as clear as I would like in a dream. And it was Georgia, and she was standing across from me, and she was smiling at me, and I had my left hand out like this, and in my left hand there was this blue gem of some kind. It was like a very beautiful gem. It was glowing. And then she put her hand on top of my hand, and then I put my right hand on top of her hand, and then she
kind of like this.
Yeah, kind of like this. And then she put her hand on top, and then a priest on my right side had a purple ribbon and wrapped, it was like a blue, or it was kind of a bluish purple ribbon, and wrapped our hands together. And then I opened my eyes, and I thought, what in the world was that? Like, what does that mean? And at the time, I had experienced I had started learning about dreams and visions, you know, that had nothing to do with this, but I just started learning and jumping into that world. And so when that happened, I thought, that's bizarre, and it kind of looked like a wedding or a marriage thing, and I sort of tucked that away, and she was one of the people that, and this is where I started making some mistakes, because I was really, and this is where I hope you can learn from my mistakes, I was really immature in my walk, and especially in the realm of the spirit when it came to like dreams, because I had no clue what I was doing with that, and I was experiencing things that I didn't know how to explain. I know that she actually had experience with some of these things, and so I actually went up to her and said, hey, I had this like experience, and I think it might mean this, I don't know. And that basically implied that I was thinking that the Lord was saying she was going to be my wife someday. And
He basically told me that I was going to be his wife.
right, and I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but it had to do with that specific vision. And in my excitement and in my zeal, and really I just wasn't, it was a manipulative thing, although I know that wasn't my intention, but it was
Right,
manipulative,
it wasn't.
and that's never a right thing to do. It's never, you should never go and just straight up tell the person what you think in that sense. You should always take it to the Lord. But I was very immature in that way, and I thought it was the right thing to do at the time, and it wasn't.
So what do you do if that happens to you?
You take it to prayer. If you ever have a vision,
What do you do?
or if you ever have a vision, or you ever have an experience like that, you have to really give it to the Lord and take it to prayer, and just simply be obedient in the things the Lord tells you to do. Sometimes we try and take it into our own hands, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell her about this because she knows what dreams and visions meant, and I had thought maybe she'll be already on the same page, and the reality is I was completely off. And all it did is it put her in a tough position, because now she's in a position where she either has to tell me, no, you're not hearing the Lord, or I'm going to completely submit to what the Lord's telling you, even though He's not told me that. And it's just not the way to do it. But that's how we started, and that's how I started in this, and that was not right. But
And I mean, I was in that position of having to, like, we had all the same friends, and so I felt like I had to completely pull away or go along with this. I
Right.
had to pick one.
And so
Like,
when
I know he just said that, but like it was so huge. Like, now I don't get to hang out with the same friends because now I have to pull completely away and not hang out.
Because that's what her default method was when you didn't know how to handle that situation, was to defend herself from feeling controlled, which I was being controlling. To defend herself from that, she needed to pull away. And so we just didn't know exactly how to communicate what we were experiencing. And so come August, it was about almost my birthday, and I was going to go to South Dakota where my mom lives. And I'd never been there yet, but it was my first trip out there since my mom had moved there. And she decided, because of there was kind of an awkwardness that came afterwards of how do we handle this, she decided, let's not talk let's just take a week break. She dropped me off at the airport, and she said, let's just not talk while we're out there. And I said, okay, that's fine. And
so around August 11th or 12th.
Well, yeah, I was there for my birthday, August 12th. And so when I got there, I was just experiencing, I was just seeking the Lord and just doing things, just enjoying myself with my family. And every single morning there's this cave that's behind the ministry center that my mom works with. And it's this private property, and it's just this nice, cool little cave that...
It's huge. It's not little. It's huge.
It's huge, but it's really cool. And
really tall ceilings, like, what'd you say, 30, 40
natural
feet?
light that comes through in
Yeah,
it, and
30,
it's
40
beautiful.
feet, maybe?
And there's mica all around the walls. You know
Yeah.
what mica is? This reflective rock. It's just really beautiful.
It looks like diamonds.
It's really beautiful.
like the inside of a pearl, or like one of those clams. No, what are they? What are the things that have the pearls in them? Is that a clam?
Clam, yeah.
Clam or
Yeah, clam. Clam has pearls.
Clam or what's
Oyster?
another? Oyster. It looks like the inside of an oyster, all the colors, and then actually the rock is really flaky. So yeah, it just like it looks like diamonds in the cave.
It's an awesome place to go pray. And so I would get up every morning and I'd walk up the hill, up the mountain to get to the cave, and I would pray in the cave. And the very first day I was there, I was in prayer with the Lord. I was probably there for about 2 hours. And then the Lord started speaking to me about Georgia. And at first I was very hesitant to think it was the Lord. I was like, Lord, is this me? Is this not me? But I was really feeling like he was saying, this is going to be your wife. And I was really hesitant to accept that at first. And I was telling my parents about her and things like that, and I remember we were at some kind of jewelry shop that's in the town where my mom lives, and my stepdad joked, because I wanted to get her something when I came back, just as a friend. I just wanted to get her something. And my stepdad made a joke, oh, I've never known a girl that doesn't like Black Hills Gold, and I was like, no, that's way too far, that's too romantic, that's not where we're at all. And we ended up going to Mount Rushmore.
Not where we're at.
Not where we're at. And so...
Well, I'm...
Right. And so I went to Mount Rushmore the day after, and still looking around, I thought maybe I can get her a Mount Rushmore thing, that'd be cool. And when I got to the jewelry spot in Mount Rushmore, I saw this, I passed by, and it just caught my eye, this little tiny golden cross. And I saw it, and I couldn't stop looking at it, and I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, I don't want to be weird. Would this be weird if I got it for her? Should I not? I don't want to get this for her. And I felt the Lord told me to get it. And so I got it and bought it, put it in my pocket, and immediately it was like, man, what am I doing? This is so stupid. I feel ridiculous. Well, the next day, I'm in prayer, and I asked the Lord, I say, Lord, what's some way that I can pray for her right now? And in my mind's eye, I saw the color really brightly. I saw the color pink. And I didn't know what pink meant, but I thought it was a combination of red and white. White is purity, red is, I thought it meant like redemption, the blood, Jesus redeeming you. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm praying into just the fact the Lord redeems her purity and her life and things like that. And just praying into that. And as I was walking down the mountain, I saw in the corner of my eye something just kind of glimmer at me, and I looked over and I went over, walked to it, and it was a pink quartz. And immediately I had this idea, which I believe was from the Lord, of take the pink quartz, get the rock, write a prophetic word the Lord had given me, just a word about Him redeeming her purity, and wrap the cross necklace in it and give it to her. That was one day. Then the next day, I started thinking, I'd spend time with the Lord, worshiping the Lord, being with the Lord. And as I was walking down the mountain, I felt, I started thinking about her birthday, a month away. I started thinking, man, I would like to get her something cool for her birthday. And all of a sudden, I had another idea, which I thought was from the Lord. Because I'm normally not, I wouldn't say I'm normally this creative. There was mica all over the walls. And I know that she has kind of a prophetic bent to her. And so the scripture that came to mind, 1 Corinthians 13, now we see in part, then we will see fully, just as I am fully known. Now we see a mirror dimly, and then I will see clear, or see fully as I am fully known. This scripture came to mind, and I had this idea of, okay, the mica is kind of reflective. Maybe what I'll do is I'll get a board and I'll put the mica around the board, and then there will be a mirror. And so it kind of is a picture of what the scripture is saying. It's like one thing is not seen clearly, but then in the middle you're seeing clearly. And then on the side, I had this idea of I'll get a piece of glass, and behind the glass is going to be Jesus' face or something like that. And I thought it'd be this cool, like, prophetic gift to give to her for her birthday.
Prophetic.
And so I go up the next day, and my main thought was, I don't know how I'm going to get a piece of glass cut that way, because I don't know how to cut glass. Maybe I'll break a piece of glass, and hopefully it's not sharp or whatever it is. I didn't know what to do. So the next day I'm walking up the mountain. As I'm walking up the mountain, something catches my eye, and I look, and I just felt the Lord say, go over there. And so I walk over there and I pick it out, and it was this it was this piece of glass that was just cut in a certain way that it was almost like a moon shape.
Half moon, yeah.
Like a half moon shape. Perfect. And I completely, like, no sharp edges.
It was like,
and in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I hear the Lord. Because up until that point, I was thinking I'm crazy. I was doing these things, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to go through with them, because I was just like, I don't even know if this is the Lord, but I'm just going to keep going. And when I saw the piece of glass, and it was just perfect for the exact thing that I thought I wanted to do, I was like, wow, I hear the Lord. This is the Lord. She's going to be my wife someday. Like, I thought, oh my gosh, what in the world? And so I went up, I collected all the mica, I did everything, I cleaned them all that night, and then 2 days later I headed home. And she actually ended up picking me up. And in the car, I gave her the necklace and the rock and the thing, but I didn't say anything about the mica stuff. I didn't say anything about her birthday present. But one thing the Lord told me was this: before I came back, when I was praying, He said to me, when you get back, things are going to be different, but that'll change after her birthday. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. So when I came back, we were in the car, and she was driving me home, and she says, I feel peace. And I was like, amen. But she was like, I feel peace about us not being together. And I was like, okay, which went along the lines of what I felt the Lord was already saying was going to happen. So I felt okay, and I was like, okay, that's fine. I think I was still feeling a little discouraged, because it was just one of those things where, you start to dream a little bit with the Lord, and you anticipate what it's going to be like, and then all of a sudden reality of where you're at hits, and you're like, oh gosh, this isn't as fun as I want it to be. And she knew that was the case, and so that night we ended up on the phone again and talking, and she actually got a prophetic picture, and that picture was, she said, I don't know why, but I see right now a pink birthday cake, which again, I associate her with the color pink because of the way the Lord had me pray with that flash of pink. But she says, I see a pink birthday cake with an arrow pointing towards it. And she said, I have no clue what that means. And I'm sitting there like, looking up like, what in the world, Lord? That's crazy.
Because it lines up with the other prophetic word about...
Because it lined up with everything that I had
birthday, after my birthday.
Right, and so I knew that was Him saying, just wait till the birthday and things are going to change again. And she knew nothing about that. I had not told her that's what the Lord told me.
There was another part where the pink was going up to the blue.
Right, that was later. So So then about a week goes by, and things are kind of awkward between us. Things aren't the same. We hung out with, I think, friends like maybe one time that week, but nothing was really the same. It was kind of different. We weren't as close intentionally. And I knew that it was actually really it started to really affect me. And it was about 2 weeks before school started. And so I knew before school started, I really wanted to fast and pray. And so I told her and everyone else in my life, I said, I'm going to take 2 weeks and I'm going to put my phone in airplane mode, and I'm going to completely just be with the Lord for 2 weeks, and I'm going to fast, I'm going to pray, and I'm just, for not anything to do with her, but just for the sake of going into the school year. And before I did, she's like, can I pray for you about this thing? I said, okay, that's great. And so as she was praying for me, she got another picture, and the picture was this. She said, I see 2 glowing orbs. One of them's pink, one of them's blue, and I see the pink one up here at the top, and I see the blue one at the bottom, and I see over time the blue one going up to the pink one, and then I see them raveling together.
They come together as one.
And yeah, and so I associated in this instance me with blue, because in my very first vision I had this blue orb that I was giving her, and her with pink. And so when she said this to me, again, she had no clue what I was thinking, but I was just
I didn't know that.
She didn't know what the
anything.
word meant. To her it meant nothing.
The
She had
birthday
no
cake
clue what it meant.
Nothing. All of them meant nothing.
But to me it was like, wow, the Lord is really speaking to me about this topic. And then I went into this time of fasting and praying. And so every single day I would get up, I would give myself food, breakfast, and I would go and spend hours just worshiping, just being with the Lord, just seeking Him, and just hearing what His heart was for me in this season. And I just experienced just vision after vision of you, of Georgia. And I wouldn't say that I was seeking it, but I wasn't fighting it. I was like, okay, Lord, let's talk about this. What are we doing? And so I'd say there were 2 in that season that I think really stuck out, and that really made me hold on. And the very first one, I was listening to the song "Color" by Upper Room, and I was just worshiping. I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just focusing on the Lord. And as soon as the song "Color" came on, I remember I was in my closet. I knew that I was still awake because I was still hearing the song, but I went into another vision where my eyes were closed and something was like playing out in front of me. And I was on a bed, and it was white sheets, white everything, and I was on this bed, and this blonde curly hair comes up in front of my face and then flips backwards, and I see this little girl, just adorable, joyful, laughing her head off girl, and I immediately felt in my heart this overwhelming feeling of love for this girl, like crazy, like a fatherly love for this girl. And I tackled her and was like kissing her cheek, and it was just this really adorable moment. And then the vision panned up to the side where I saw a picture of Georgia with blonde curly hair. And I opened my eyes, and I'm back in my closet, and I am bawling, like just intense love, like the father's love for Georgia. And I was like, I was so confused. At first I thought, like, Lord, is this like gonna be our daughter? Like, I was having so many different thoughts that I was fighting, and I ended up talking to somebody, and they were like, I really think he was trying to show you his heart for Georgia, how he sees her. And I was like, that's amazing. And so every single time I would look at her after that, I would be overwhelmed with that same feeling of like, oh my gosh, like the Father loves you so much, and was really like having a tough time not communicating some of this, because I was just like, we were still talking a little bit, but it was there was some awkwardness, but we were still friends. We could still talk, and it wasn't that weird. But I was very much overwhelmed with this affection towards her. And that was one of them that really impacted me. Another one was this. In the dream, we were getting married, and we were standing on the edge of this cliff, and all of our family and friends were there, and this wind came and knocked us off the cliff, and we were falling. And I was holding on to her, she was passed out, we were falling, and the whole time we were falling, this scripture is Psalm 92, I believe.
Psalm 91?
Psalm 91 says, he will send his angels regarding you that you will not strike your foot against a stone. And I kept repeating that over and over again. He will send his angels regarding you that you will not strike your foot against a stone. And so we're falling, and then all of a sudden I see a sideways angle of us falling into this valley, and a giant gold angel comes and catches us and gently places us on the ground. Then people up top look down and they say, are you okay? And I say, oh yeah, we're fine, we're okay. And I turn to look at her, and I feel her pulse, and I know she's dead. And so then I start praying for her. I say these words. I say, the Bible says, these signs will follow them that believe, they will raise the dead. I put a demand on this in heaven, and I say, come back here. And then she opened her eyes, she smiled at me, and that was the end of that vision. And I had no clue what that meant. And so I sent it to a friend of mine who does, not her, but just a different person who does like dream stuff. And after praying about it, he messaged me back and said, this is what I believe the vision meant. And he said that my view of us being married someday is going to cause a fallout between the two of us, where I'm holding on, she's dead to it, and I'm trusting the Lord's going to catch us. But eventually, the Lord does catch us, but she's still going to be dead to it. People are going to wonder, what's going on with you guys? And then me speaking life over her and being a friend to her is what's going to, she's going to eventually see who I really am in her life. And I said, okay, wow, that's awesome. And so I held on to that for the entirety of our relationship. And so over the course of the next few months, we had a lot of ups and downs, because ultimately she had already known where I was at because of what the conversations we had had previously.
What are the things that you would say to me, like, I don't need anything from you, you don't owe me anything?
I really tried to recover from my mistakes, and the Lord was teaching me a lot about what love was. And so also during that process, where the Lord had me in Scripture, was a lot of like 1 Corinthians 13 and 1 John, things about what love was like. And I had been in so many bad relationships, like not anything like not as much physically bad, but just emotionally, just bad relationships and bad communication. And really, I didn't know what love was. And I'd only witnessed unhealthy relationships really my entire life. And so when he was going on with me through this journey, it seemed like every single preacher at school would have a random moment where they'd stop and they'd talk about relationships for a second, and then they'd come back to what they were going. And every single time, it was exactly the questions that I had been asking the Lord. It was exactly where I had been wanting to learn about what love was supposed to look like. And so I was communicating to her, because we were having this like relationship where we were super, super close and good friends.
We were best friends.
We were best friends. But we had this underlying issue of, she knew that I had thought that the Lord said that she was my wife, and I knew that she was not there. He said yes to me, he said no to her, and we were both pretty vocal about that.
Yeah, very vocal.
And that was our big mistake, because that's where it caused issues. We were best friends, but what started to happen was, although we were close, and although I was still being encouraged by the Lord in this whole process, she couldn't get away from the fact of what I had said in the beginning, of what I thought the Lord had said. And at that point, I actually tried to learn about what love actually looked like, and I tried to be different. I tried to change. I tried to not be embittered. I tried to just be a friend to her and not worry about it.
And that's really what I needed the whole time.
But it was hard for her, because she still felt like he thinks that we're going to be together.
Yeah.
And I genuinely was like, okay, I want you to know you don't owe me anything. Because the Lord had done so much in my heart as far as letting go of selfishness in this process. He's like, I was like, you don't owe me anything. I'm fine with just being your friend. And what would happen was, there were times where she would start to feel romantic feelings for me in our friendship.
Yeah.
And because she was afraid of that, and she felt like she was disobeying the Lord by feeling that, she would then push away and say, I can't talk to you anymore. And she would cut me off from her life for a week or 2 weeks, until that feeling would kind of go away, and then she would come back. And at the time,
because we were always together, we always had the same friends.
Yeah. And at the time, I was sort of learning the patience of the Lord, because everything that she was doing in my life in her relationship with me, it had patterned things that I had done previously in my relationship with the Lord, where I would kind of pull away from the Lord and come back, etc. And the Lord was showing me so much how much He loved me and His patience, and who He was as a patient father, as a patient bridegroom, all this stuff like that. And so there was like this grace for me to have patience for her when she was kind of playing with my heart, for lack of a better term. She was kind of going back and forth with me on how she was responding to me. And that happened for months. And there were times where it was actually really discouraging, and I would always be going back to the Lord, because, you know, I wasn't perfect. I would always be going back to the Lord, sometimes frustrated, like, Lord, why do I keep going through this? I don't even want to deal with this anymore. Why is this happening? And every single time when we were about to go through a really tough season, the Lord would give me another vision or another dream, something to confirm, something for me to lean back on before we went into it. One of those, I had a dream. It was right after I went to a friend's wedding. She was supposed to come with us, and she decided not to go at the last minute because she was afraid that
we would grow close. If we were
close
on a road trip, we're going to be talking more. We're going to be
with friends
together
and,
and for a whole weekend.
And so she
I
didn't
want
go.
that to happen.
And when I was there, a woman that I knew was a kind of a mentor of mine, I hadn't seen in months, and she didn't know anything about this relationship, says to me, during the wedding I saw you, and I actually saw you getting married soon. And I was like, do you know to who? And, you know, I was asking questions.
That was in October.
And that was in October.
2019.
And she said, I don't know. I said, listen, I don't know who, I don't know what. I'm just telling you what I heard from the Lord, what I saw. I feel like you're gonna get married soon. So I was like, okay, great. And we kind of went through more seasons of being back and forth. And when I was about to go through a season of discouragement, I had another dream, or another vision. Actually, no, this one was a dream. I had another dream, and it was me and her. We were talking, and that lady who prophesied came up to her and said, what are you doing? Why are you resisting this? Don't you know it's a yes in the spirit already? And in the dream, I was like, no, you can't do that. That's wrong. It's manipulative. Please stop. And she got upset and walked away. So then we were going to be on our way to Santa Fe was where in the dream I thought we were going to go. We were supposed to go together. And I remember thinking in the dream, are we going to end up going to Santa Fe together? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And the last part of the dream I remembered is I was sitting in a car on the passenger seat heading to Santa Fe, but I didn't know who was driving. I didn't know if I was with her or if I was with other people. So then 2 days later, she's giving me a ride to work, and she said, I need to stop by my house real quick. And so we are driving to her house, and as we turn outside of her...
Had you ever been to my house?
I had never been to her house yet. As we're leaving her house, I look...
No, as we're going into the...
Sorry, yeah, as we're going into the housing area.
It's like a big community of houses, and they're always called something, like the community of houses.
The name of the community of houses was... I was in the passenger seat, and the community house was Santa Fe Trails.
Yeah.
And I have a picture of that too, so we can throw that up there too.
Yeah.
And I was so like, what in the world? I was blown away. And it was just those little confirmations.
He didn't explain it in that moment.
I didn't explain it in that moment.
After that one time, he told me I was his wife, and I was like, nope, this isn't gonna work. Like,
I learned my lesson that time.
After that, he never shared.
I never shared again
anything. Because
I really didn't want it to be an issue. And so I just wanted our friendship to be good. I didn't want there to be any issues. And so, anyway, so I saw Santa Fe Trails, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the Lord. This is amazing. And I'm freaking out. Like, she's like wondering what's going on. I couldn't tell her. I was like, nothing. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. It's nothing. It's whatever.
Remember that thing you said? You're like, sometimes you just look up to the Lord and be like, Lord?
Yeah,
that
sometimes
thing in him and Cam.
Me and my friend Cameron, we would sometimes have moments where something would happen, and the Lord would say something, but I didn't know exactly what it was, so we'd like look in the sky and be like, what are you saying?
Lord!
Lord, what are you saying? We have no clue what it was, and that was one of those moments where I'm like, what does that mean? And I actually looked up what Santa Fe meant, and Santa Fe means holy faith in Spanish.
Wow.
So that was a really cool thing too. Didn't know anything
That
about
makes
that.
sense. I know that, I guess.
It makes sense.
I know
She's
that.
speaks Spanish,
I know
so
that.
she knows that. But it means holy faith in Spanish, and so I was like, wow, that's the journey that we're going on. Lord, are we going on this journey of holy
Yeah.
faith? Our Christmas break comes around. After months of kind of on and off again communication, talking to each other, not talking to each other, etc. I'd say we were the closest we'd ever been, friendship-wise. I mean,
Yeah,
we
friendship-wise.
knew intimate details about each other's lives. Just talking and praying with each other and encouraging each other in the Lord and different things like that, it just grew our friendship. And she came up to me at work a day before she left to go home for 2 weeks.
I wasn't planning
And
this. This wasn't planned.
Yeah, and I was going to be gone for 2 weeks. By the time she came back, I would have left. And so, long story short, I was going to be out of town. She was going to be out of town. I wasn't going to see her face to face for a month, but I figured we were going to be texting and calling and chatting and stuff. And the day before she leaves, she comes up to me at work and she says, so I decided that we should not talk during the break because she was wanting to move on from me, and she felt like if she walked away that she would move on from me.
And I was hoping that he wouldn't come back to LCU.
She was hoping that I wouldn't come back to LCU, which I didn't want to.
He didn't want to come back
I didn't want to come
anyways.
back, and so
But
I went
was
on
like,
that break.
It was a selfish thing up from my part of like, it'll just make it easier, like if he just goes away, because the Lord said no, and this will be a clean break, and he'll move on, and he'll go back to where he's from, and I'll stay at LCU another semester. But it was selfish, like, but at the same time, I was just wanting it to be finally done. Like, we're really good friends, and I love our friendship, but the Lord said no to me. The Lord said no, so it was like really hard.
It was hard. And that was probably the toughest season I had during the whole thing because we weren't communicating at all.
Yeah.
And occasionally she would reach out just to see how I was doing.
Very rare.
Like maybe once or twice during the entire month. She had reached out and we had talked here and there. But ultimately I remember saying these words, she's dead to this whole thing. She's done. She doesn't want this anymore. And I felt like that was it. And I was reminded by the Lord of that vision of us having a fallout, which the Lord would catch us. And so I was very discouraged. I was going through a lot at that time. I had visited my dad and my grandparents, and there was just a lot that I was kind of going through outside of this. And I was at a point with the Lord where I was so frustrated with this relationship that I said, I don't even want to talk about this anymore, Lord. I'm done. You know what? I must have been wrong. I've not been hearing the Lord. And the whole time I've always kind of said, I could have been hearing wrong. I didn't want to just say just because I saw these things that I knew exactly what it meant. So the whole time I was kind of in that place of I could always have been wrong. But at that point I said I must have been wrong. I said, Lord, I repent. I'm sorry that I even invested so much time and thought and energy into this. I messed up and I didn't hear you right and all these different things. I started questioning and being frustrated. And
but my encounter with the Lord was so real. I'll share with you my encounter, but it goes along with the
when I came back, I didn't want to come back to school because I knew she was going to be there. Just straight up. I thought she was going to be there. At this point, this is clearly not the Lord. I don't want anything to do with this. And I was just frustrated. And I wasn't hearing anything from the Lord anymore about it. I wasn't doing any fundraising. I said, Lord, if you want me back at school, you're going to have to pay for it. And within 24 hours, my entire tuition got paid off.
Which is $2,500.
$2,500.
Within 24 hours.
Given to me. And I said, I was frustrated, but I said, okay, Lord, I guess I have to go back. And I went back, and the first 2 weeks were really rough. I didn't want to talk about it more, but the very first, actually, let me rewind that. So I get back. I didn't want to talk about her.
Is this January?
This was in January when school started.
2020.
The Saturday night before school started, okay, I was at a place where I was completely done talking to anybody about this, especially the Lord. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I had a dream that night, and in the dream, I was texting her, and she had texted me this whole long thing about how I'm the one for her, how this is going to be her, that she wanted to be with me, all this sort of stuff. And my response in the dream, I text her back saying, but what did the Lord say? Because I knew that she would not do it unless the Lord said something.
Yeah.
So then I go, and I had gone to everybody, telling them, all these different random people, telling them about the situation, and each one, they were like, we're praying for you, man. One of them was Rick Pino. And after I saw the text message, I'm somehow in a car with Rick Pino, and I'm nervous to tell him that she now wanted to be with me in the dream. And because I thought he was going to correct me, saying, you should have been celebrating, you should have been happy, this is what you've been wanting. But then I eventually did tell him. I told him, I just told him everything of what happened in the text, and then he turns to me as if he's going to say something to me, and I woke up. And I was frustrated. My roommate, I immediately told my roommate, I was like irritated. I said, I can't believe it. I'm so sick of this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I can't believe the Lord keeps bringing this up. I don't want to talk about it with him anymore. I was just irritated at the Lord and about the whole situation. And I told my roommate that, and he's like, well, bro, let's just hold this. Let's get our mind off it. Let's go get some food. So we get in the car, and I open my Instagram. And as I open my Instagram, what pops up on my Instagram, the very first thing that I see is a post from Rick Pino, and in big letters it says, believe the dream.
What?
And he starts talking about Habakkuk 1, where it says, though it's slow in coming, it will come to pass. And he's talking about the promise of God, and how every promise is like a seed, and it's our job to steward it with faith. And just literally just, I feel the Lord. It just went through my whole situation, and I was like, wow, Lord, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do this thing in me. It's gonna happen. And I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. And that just boosted my faith coming into the next season.
And I never knew any of these dreams. None of these dreams.
So we come back to school. So school starts, and she was kind of acting different around me, acting weird, and she was always a very affectionate person with people, and so she's very much like like this kind of person. So she would be sitting with certain people, and as she was sitting with certain guys, certain people, that jealousy would try to creep in. And what the Lord was teaching me is how to fight that jealousy was start praying for that relationship. So where the enemy's trying to cause you to divide, and be against somebody, the Lord was kind of teaching me, when she was sitting with someone that I could be jealous of, I would start to pray, Lord, I just thank you for blessing that relationship. I thank you for watching over them and protecting them. I thank you for them growing closer. And it was killing jealousy in my life. But for that first 2 weeks, it was really difficult, and I was really fighting it. And so in that process, she was still giving me rides to work, because at the time I didn't have a car. And I remember she wanted to listen to this series about the spirit realm, it was about heaven and all these different things like that. And in the series, they mentioned some kind of angel. And I said, what angel is that? And she goes, that's the angel that in Psalm 91, the angel that will help, the angel that will catch you, that you won't strike your foot against the stone.
Yeah.
And I said, what did you just say? She said, that's the angel that will catch you, that you won't strike your foot against the stone.
It's so crazy.
And I just looked at her like she was like insane. She goes, what? I'm like, nothing. And we just kept going. And at that point, she had started, that romantic feeling started coming back, and she was wanting to pull away again. But I was talking with one of the pastors at our school at the time, telling him pretty much the whole situation. And I didn't know how to handle it because it was affecting me emotionally. It was just kind of affecting me, just in general. And I said, he said, listen, right now, this is her way of trying to control, because she doesn't know how to deal with this situation. She doesn't know how to deal with these feelings. So you need to be a man, and you need to take control in some ways, and you start setting the ground rules. So I said, okay. And so the next time that she was wanting to pull away, I said, this is what we're going to do. I can't do this anymore with this relationship of back and forth, because forget relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you want to call it. As a friend, you're not even being a good friend to me in the way that you're treating me with this.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks of we're not going to talk. And after those 2 weeks, I'm going to be praying and asking the Lord what he wants us to look like. And going forward from there, if it means we're done, we're done. And I'm not going to, and basically I took control over what this is going to look like. And
so
then I moved away, and I didn't move away. I got out of the picture, and I completely left her alone because I knew that she was done with this whole thing, and I was done. And
yeah, and so after a whole year, after like April, May of kind of when we started talking, nothing had changed with the Lord. The Lord had not said anything more about him at all. Nothing. And believe me, I asked him, and I was starting to think that I couldn't hear the Lord because of it. Like, I could hear the Lord about a bajillion things, but because I didn't feel like I could hear the Lord, or the Lord wasn't saying anything more about this, I was feeling like I couldn't hear the Lord at all, which was a lot. But then I just started to like seek about what love looks like and what marriage most of all looks like, and what love looks like within marriage.
After I had put those
after he had put those, like, we're not going to talk for 2 weeks in January. And so I really started to seek that out. There were so many things, even along the way, that I had fears and insecurities about what relationships look like. And I've talked with other friends that a lot of women actually have felt the same thing, and it goes along with how the Lord made like women to want to feel secure. And so, but there were a lot of fears, like wanting to control the way he is from the very beginning. And like the church where I grew up, in a lot of the different youth groups and different things where I grew up, they would say like to guys and girls to make sure you have a list, and that you check it twice, and that you look at it, and you're like making sure that the person that you marry loves the Lord most of all, more than you. And then, but he had that, but there were other things that I wanted on this list that he necessarily wasn't that. And so that's what I was looking for, because I had grown up thinking this is what it is supposed to look like, and you won't do anything else. But more so than that, I started to learn, like, could we even do good in a mission field, because we both felt called to missions. And so I had seen a couple that reminded us, and the Lord spoke to me through a couple of seeing them from they were from Germany, and they were living here, and just their dynamic was very similar to our dynamic, and they were so amazing. And the Lord said, see, you will do well and you will be fine. I will take care of you when you go and you study abroad, or when you go and do missions. And he spoke to me through a lot of different things, and one of the things was that you can try to control and find somebody that is like exactly who you're looking for. Like, I don't mean like they should love the Lord first, and there's a lot of things that you should be looking for, that they love. You know, maybe if you have like, you don't want them like not drinking or smoking or different things, but like things that are just mostly based on the Lord. But I was trying to control little things of like, like things that are variable. Like for my thing was like money and fitness, because in my past my parents had struggled with money, and so I could see would be a thing that would hinder our relationship, would be if struggling with money. Or like fitness, like my dad had a heart attack at a very young age, and I felt like I was gonna lose him at a really young age. I was only in 8th grade when he had a heart attack, so he could have died. And so there were things like not taking, like there's just things I was trying to control, but the Lord had spoke to me like, no, you can find somebody that has all these things already, but you can't control what's going to happen down the road and what's going to happen to that person. You can always pray and you can control like the atmosphere around you, but sometimes this is still a fallen world and stuff can still happen by mistake or whatever, but you don't know what's going to happen, all the things. So you have to hear the Lord about who that is you're going to marry, and stuff can still change. And the Lord may want to grow you into the person. That's why you get married, is so that the Lord can grow you together into Christ. And I see this is what, when I talked with one of our pastors, she was sitting there, and the Lord showed me this picture of two separate hands, two separate people, and they become one, but they grow in, and they're still like, they're connected, but the Lord still has a plan for Caleb, and the Lord still has a plan for me. Although we are one, our plans still become one, but there's still like a destiny that's on Caleb's life that I will run with, and vice versa, that we'll run with together, and so that they become the same vision and destiny, but you still grow together to become, the Lord might like use me to help grow Caleb and vice versa, which that's the point, right?
And has happened.
And has happened.
In
it's
many
like,
ways.
just before all of, even up to this point, we've both like grown so much into be who God has called us to be, which is so perfect. So what I'm saying is like, you don't have to find the perfect person as what Hollywood or Instagram says, but the perfect person for you, you know? And so, and the Lord will grow. You might do things that like you don't necessarily want to do, but the other person does, and you do that because of love, you know? And so, but also,
so you were saying
I learned
during
like
the 2 weeks.
with that this was all in that 2 weeks. And so like then I learned like that, is it somebody, the Lord spoke to me that since I was a really young child, I wanted the person that I was gonna marry to be my best friend. Like I wanted them to already, so that no matter what we go through when it's hard things, but that we would be best friends and want to go and do life together. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're best friends and we go together. And so, but that's what we had become, was best friends.
Yeah.
And also like, do you, like was asking the questions like, do I prefer Caleb, and do I want to serve him for the rest of my life? Do I honor him and like
And
lay
vice
my
versa.
life, and lay my life down for him and put his dreams and his goals above mine? And there were many other things that the Lord spoke, a lot of insecurities, a lot of fears that really had to come down, because I had this preconceived notion of what marriage and what love was supposed to look like, and that it was supposed to be flawless. There was another thing, like if anything went wrong, like when he had told me that I was supposed to be his person, I was like, it's completely wrong. If one thing went wrong, I would be like, it's over. Like we can't, now I have to go find someone else, because
It needs to be perfect from start
it
to
has to
finish.
be perfect from the start, because I'll always think this is the foundation, but that's wrong, because your whole marriage stuff isn't going to go perfect, and you have to be able to work through it. So
And that's where you can lean on the Lord, as even if, like I said, even
You
in my
have
mistakes
to.
in the beginning, really it's a testament to
the Lord,
God's faithfulness, because I made a lot of mistakes in the way I communicated things, and yet God was faithful in keeping with his promise, and God was faithful in doing what he said he was going to do. And that's really where we have to trust in our marriage, is trusting that God is the one, when things can get difficult, that we have to lean on, and trust that he's the one who's faithful.
Yeah.
And he's the one who will get us through it. And not just us leaning on each other, but leaning on him. And so
Yeah.
that's some of the stuff that she was starting to learn in just those 2 weeks.
yeah,
By
it
talking
was
to
very
different people
fast,
and
very
talking
fast.
with the Lord.
Yeah, and so I had started to have more peace. I was talking with a lot of pastors and meeting frequently with them, and I met with a lot of different people, and the Lord would speak through the people. He would speak in my time with him every morning and on my runs, and throughout the day he was speaking about it, and we weren't talking. And so then I came to this point of like, after I had met with one of the pastors, almost for like, after a while, I just felt peace. Like I felt peace about us, and I felt for the first time ever moving forward and having peace. And that was the very first time after like just under a year, from April of 2019 to January 2020, at the end of January 2020.
Right, because by the beginning of February, Valentine's Day.
Yeah, so that was the day before Valentine's Day. I had met with our pastor, and I felt peace. And I was going to tell him that I was ready to move forward on Valentine's Day and
start dating.
But the Lord had not said yes and did not encounter me. So a little bit of backstory. When I was in college, this is how the Lord encountered me the first time, but I knew he was saying no. Well, so in college, I was just worshiping the Lord, and I had freshly been baptized in the Holy Spirit, and I was just worshiping the Lord, and I was like, Lord, you're so beautiful, and you're so holy and worthy and beautiful. And all of a sudden I saw this like circle, like a flash behind my eyes. It was in my eyelids, like behind my eyes, but my eyes were closed. And it was this bright flashing light. And at that time, our campus ministry did not have any lights. There were no flashing lights or shiny guitars or nothing. It was nothing like that. It was just lights on the screen. There was no flashing lights, and I was like, instantly I was like, because I had not had very spiritual swirly things no, like at that point. And so didn't know what that was. I was like, Lord, is this you? And then I was like, was this the enemy? But I was worshiping the Lord and just loving him, and I knew he was agreeing. It was an agreement. And I was like, this was the Lord. And so since that whole time, from college until now, till today, he doesn't use that as much, because it's like usually now he does it for like big things. He doesn't do it for just everyday things all the time, but he'll use it for bigger things.
But that's what happened when you initially heard
Initially, no. I was like, Lord, is he not the one for me? And the Lord flashed. And so
he said no.
He said
initially.
no. It was an agreement, right? And I felt peace about it. I was a little frustrated, but I felt peace from the first time, but I still liked him throughout that time. But I felt peace, and I just felt fine, although I was still frustrated. Anyways, so then fast forward back to where we are the day before Valentine's Day. I was just with the Lord, and I just was praying like, Lord, I felt peace about this, like, I don't know. And I just brought it before him, and I was walking into the room, and I put my coffee down because it was 4 a.m. when I would spend time with the Lord. And I just like closed my eyes and like covered my eyes basically, and I was just praying like super intense. And the Lord flashed behind my eyes, and he was like, it's time. And I was like, I got goosebumps. I have goosebumps now, but I got goosebumps, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like worshiping the Lord. I was like, what the heck? Because back in college, I had so many times tried to make that. This was way before, like years and years. In 2013, I would try to make that thing, that flash of light, but I could never make it happen. It was always it was just the Lord. Like, I couldn't do it. And so it was just like, it's just so unique to me and the Lord. But
so that day we had a worship day at school. It was just worship all day. It was like a chapel service. Like, we had worship all day.
Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day. And I had no idea. She was doing camera at the time. I had no idea what her intentions were that night. I knew she wanted to take me. She said, I want to go to lunch with you. And she said, I had said, like, well, what is it you wanted to talk about? And I was under the impression, because we had a conversation the night before where she kind of implied that it was not going to be good news. I was under the impression that she was going to basically say, I can't do this anymore. We're not going to talk ever again. Like, it was.
But I didn't say that.
She didn't say that, but this is where my mind was going. I kind of had the impression of that.
Making that because I didn't really say anything. Like, I was just like, I wanted to meet with you and talk and take you to lunch.
Right. And
he just kept asking, and so I was
asking, and so she kind of had to deter me, which it worked. And we were at worship the whole time, and the whole time during worship, I laid it down with the Lord, and I said, Lord, really all I need is you, Lord. Like, that's all I'm worried about. That's all I need. At that time, I decided to let it go. I said, Lord, I give it to you no matter what happens today, because I was actually assuming the worst. I said, no matter what happens today, I'm going to be okay. I'm with you, Jesus. And that was it. And we went to go to eat. And before we got inside of the restaurant,
I had said, I had made a new YouTube video. Well, I told him I made a new YouTube video. It was about, what was it about?
She would often ask me my opinion on her YouTube videos before she would post them. And she said, I created this new video. It was called The Mysteries of God.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to run it by you to see what you think.
And so I
So I,
showed it to him.
but on the video, it was her telling me everything the Lord had been doing over the last 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
basically saying
I choose you.
she was choosing me and ready to commit to me. And basically the culmination of everything that I had been going through over the last few months of just year
Almost a
of
year.
just being
8
patient
months, 9
and
months.
going through this whole journey came to a head, and I just started losing it. I was crying. I was bawling.
I didn't know
was
what
like,
to do. I was
she didn't know
like,
what to do. She was like, it was kind of funny actually to see. But
I was awkward. I was very awkward.
But I was just like, because it was the Lord. I was like, wow, Lord, I heard you. I was right. Like you do see me. You do care. It was this whole thing of just the love of the Father and just the whole situation. And so in a way, she technically asked to date me, because at that point, I mean, that was the only way to do it, because she already knew where I was at.
Well, he would always say, my heart is the same. It's not going to change. Like, you don't owe me anything.
Right.
You don't.
I was very consistent throughout the whole
And he's
thing.
like, my heart isn't ever going to change. I'm this way.
So she knew where I was at no matter what. But I didn't, when she changed, her heart changed, she had to communicate that to me. So that was...
That's what he said.
And
like,
that was
you're
when
gonna
we
have to tell me
started.
when your heart changes.
Yeah, if your heart changes. And so that's when we started dating.
Well, fast forward. We are engaged.
So over the next few months, COVID happened, quarantine happened, and we actually had to physically be separate for about 2 months. But it was crazy.
2 months.
It was crazy the grace the Lord had on it, because our whole relationship had been, we've been very friendship, and we were communicating and texting, but we were always kind of with each other in some ways. And this was
We were
the
with
first
each other
time-
and be able to, not with each other, but we were able to talk and communicate more than we ever had.
Right, and so when we were separate physically, but we were able to actually, like, through FaceTime, talk and connect. And we were reading some books together. We were doing things together, and I think our relationship grew to such a deep level,
exponentially, and so.
and there was
deep.
such a grace behind it.
Yeah.
And then when we went down to visit family, we were going to do this thing where we went to my mom in South Dakota, then her parents in Minnesota, then down to Omaha with my dad, and then back home. And it was just going to be a trip. And I had gotten an engagement ring. I knew I was going to propose on that trip. And on that trip, the day after we got there, I proposed to her in the same cave that the Lord told me in the beginning that she was going to be my wife. And as you can see, she said yes. And so we're getting married this year, and we're just going to continue going on the journey that God has for us. But it's been an amazing journey, and I learned so much about love, and I've changed as a person so much. And I mean, I can say the main thing that always drew me to Georgia was she always brought Jesus out of me like no one else could. And she always challenged me to be more like Christ. And that was really the main thing in this relationship and in this journey, was of no matter what happens, will you continue to be patient and loving and try to be like Jesus? And I honestly had many moments, you can ask my friends, that I wasn't able to do that. And I had to go to the Lord and ask the Lord for strength. And He did, and He helped me. And honestly, throughout all my mistakes and everything that I did that was not right, and everything I did that was manipulative, and everything I did that wasn't the Lord, He still redeemed it and turned it into something beautiful. And so that's where we're at, and that's our story.
Yeah. I hope this encourages you. We love you. We're praying for you.
Yeah, and I just pray that if you're going through something similar, that God would just give you wisdom. I encourage you to speak to pastors, speak to people that can speak into your life. If you're having any fears or frustrations in regards to your relationships, just always focus on who Jesus is and focusing on what the truth is in Him. And outside of that, everything else will fall into place. Don't worry so much about how you're going to make things happen. Just focus on the Lord. And if this is something that He wants in your life, He will let them fall into place.
He will
let Him do it. And that'd be my main place of encouragement. Let God do it.
Let Him do it. It's
And
the best
when He
way.
does, it's better than anything you can imagine. So, we love you.
Bless you.